The F-84 Thunderjet was one of a number of aircraft to come out of U.S. Army Air Corps requests for new jet fighters during the ending phases of World War II. Republic Aviation wanted to come up with a jet-powered replacement for their P-47, but realized that their initial design concept wasn't going to work, so they basically started over with a clean sheet design. The new aircraft was essentially designed around a single axial flow jet engine that was under development over at General Electric, and used entirely conventional design elements and internal structures, both to speed up the process and also help make sure the thing would actually work when it was done. The first plane was completed in December of 1945, and it first flew in February of 1946, becoming the first post-war American fighter. The new jet featured a laminar flow wing profile, a long slender fuselage, and avionics equipment that was updated for high-speed flight. The jet was originally designed as an interceptor, but Republic and the military started to re-evaluate its role after its performance in testing came up short of expected levels, a problem that proved common to most early jet designs. The jet was recognized early on as being badly underpowered, and the takeoff performance was so bad that a common joke developed that the plane had a sniffer device in the front landing gear that wouldn't let the plane take off until it could sniff the dirt at the end of the runway. During the Korean War, the jet was phased out of air combat roles after the appearance of the MiG-15 and refocused for ground attack and close air support. In that role, it proved quite capable as, despite its shortcomings, it was very stable in level flight, which made accurate ground strikes pretty simple. The plane was gradually upgraded over time, with the G model being the most widely produced, with over 3,000 examples built. It served the United States and a large number of export customers for many years, with late models flying with the Turkish Air Force all the way until 1982. What we get in War Thunder are 5 versions of the F-84G. The jet is a strike aircraft in rank 5 of the American, Japanese, Chinese, Italian, and French tech trees at battle rating 7.7. And despite the French version having a slightly later model number, they're identical in-game, and this review applies to all 5. The F-84G doesn't get any kind of ballistics computer despite being a strike aircraft, but it does feature an AN/APG-30 radar rangefinder. This won't really do anything for you outside of simulator battles. The plane's primary armament is a set of 6 12.7mm Browning machine guns with 1,800 rounds of ammo in total. Individually, these guns don't hit hard, but the cluster of them combines to provide a credible level of firepower at this BR. My own suggestion is to use the Universal Belt for air combat and the Ground Targets Belt for ground attack. For loadouts, the F-84G can take a variety of dumb bombs and unguided rockets, including 2 of the huge Tiny Tims, which hit incredibly hard if you can land one on target. The flight performance of the F-84 isn't great. It's badly underpowered and suffers from shortcomings that are fairly common among 1940s jet fighters. The acceleration is especially bad, but thankfully the jet gets an air spawn, which gives you a little bit of a head start. In essence, all of its performance is directly linked to its airspeed. Again, an attribute common to early jet fighters. Above 600 kilometers an hour, its rate of climb, top-end speed, and energy retention in gentle turns are all pretty average for this BR. However, the bad news begins once you get just a little bit slower, and if you end up below around 500 kilometers an hour, everything falls apart. Climb performance, agility, turn rate, everything. Compounding this is that, since it's so underpowered, it can be incredibly difficult to regain lost airspeed. If you spawn in and immediately start a climb, the F-84 can reach a respectable maximum speed of around 0.8 Mach under live match conditions, but keep in mind it'll run into structural problems and severe control compression if you push past that. That's actually an important detail, as the jet's dive performance is really good, and if you don't make use of the air brake and cut the throttle, you can turn this plane into a lawn dart without realizing it. Speaking of the vertical, A reminder that this jet is chronically underpowered, so stuff like zoom climbs or even simple loops can often end really badly, and the F-84 ends up being incredibly easy to energy trap if you're flying against it. The longer match I included in the footage, which you're watching now, shows an example of where I allowed myself to get energy trapped climbing to attack a MiG-15 in a maneuver that a lot of other jets of this BR would have been able to hold for at least another 3 or 4 seconds, long enough to get a kill shot, but instead, the F-84 just falls out of the sky. The last thing to mention is that its general level of dogfighting agility is, quite simply, awful. The jet loses energy badly in small twitch corrections, and its poor turn performance is just the final nail in the coffin. Flying the F-84G into air battles gives you an air spawn, which you can take advantage of either for air combat or ground attack. If you opt for air combat, you have just enough climb rate to go up after spawning in and catch bombers, or you can just use your altitude and do boom and zoom vulture tactics on enemy fighters down below you. Just remember, this jet is an awful dogfighter, and you really should try to avoid twisting dogfights whenever possible, as hopefully evidenced by the fight with the MiG-15 in the footage I included. If you get a competent opponent on your 6, it's basically impossible to shake them off unless you already have a significant speed advantage and can just run away in a straight line. There is one notable strength though. The F-84 is a tough jet. Sometimes this thing can absorb a significant amount of damage and remain combat effective, or at least make it back to base. I've frequently landed this thing, missing half a wing, with the plane solid black, with the tail shot up, so on and so on. In the longer match I included, I took a full burst from the MiG-15 and a dozen or so Meningeschots hits from an HO-229, and was still able to fly back to base. Watching an F-84 fly away after scoring a chain of crits on it can be a pretty frustrating experience for your opponents. In terms of ground attack, again, this is a strike jet, so it's a fairly legit thing to do with the F-84G. In air battles, you can't take out a base, but you can damage one pretty good with your pair of bombs, and if you want to attack AI ground units, the unguided rockets can give you a good quantity of shots. Similar thoughts apply if you want to do close air support, with the Tiny Tim being an especially good choice if you can actually hit with the thing. Visually, you get a selection of paint jobs across the different tech trees for this jet, with most of them being a pretty basic silver metal look with markings painted on. No fancy camo patterns or anything, but there is some good stuff on War Thunder Live if you want. When landing the F-84, you need to be careful. Keep the low engine power in mind and try not to cut the throttle too early, or you'll end up below the glide slope with no way to regain speed. Takeoff and landing crashes in this jet were really common out in real life, and you'll discover why pretty quickly. You can put the gear down at about 300 kilometers an hour, and the landing flaps at about 350. The cockpit on the F-84 feels pretty cramped, with a heavily obstructed forward view. The instrument panel is laid out well, but I really didn't enjoy flying this plane in VR. Not a great cockpit. To close out on the F-84G. This jet gets good external weapons, it gets an air spawn in RB, it's physically pretty tough, and its guns are easy to aim with a little bit of practice. However, it's chronically underpowered, it'll never be a good dogfighter, and it's got really bad takeoff and landing performance. The final verdict on the F-84G across 5 different tech trees is that this jet can struggle badly if you try to use it as an air superiority fighter, but in its intended role as a strike jet, it can get the job done pretty easily. Still, you'll replace it quickly as you move up the tech tree. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one.